So hello and welcome back to the channel. So in the last video we looked at how to build the page you see over here, and in this video we'll be focusing on building the second page. So without wasting much time, let's get right into the code. So last time, this is what we worked on, and if I can bring up my simulator. So this was what we worked on, and if you haven't watched that video, it should be linked down in the description. Right? So we learned how to build this UI from scratch, and we are going to continue by building the second page, which is this next page, speaking to AI page. Right? So what we want to do is, when we look at this page, because we have this back button over here, I'm assuming that we navigated from a certain page. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to add a click handler to this card, so that when we tap on any of these cards, it brings us to this page, which is speaking to AI bot page. So let's quickly do that, and in order to do that, we first have to go to where we have this card. So under our widgets, we have ideal card, idea or ideal. I think I made a typo in the last video, right? Anyhow you decide to call it, doesn't really matter. So what we want to do is, we want to be able to click these cards in a nicer way. So you can wrap this card with a gesture detector, but I'm not really a fan of gesture detector in terms of card, because I want to have this ripple effect when you click on the cards, just like how we have it on the list style. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to wrap this card, not the card, but then the immediate child of the card, in a ink wall widget. So wrap with widgets, and then we are going to use ink wall, and we have to provide an on tap if we want to see the ink, and then we can save. So just by doing this, wrapping your card with ink wall, when I tap, I should have this effect. But there is an issue with our ink wall, as in it is spilling outside our card because of the border radius we have. The ink wall is more like a square. So how do we fix this? Now you can manually change the border radius on the ink wall like this, and maybe giving it a value that would work with and border radius is border radius, so border radius dot maybe circular, and then giving it a value like 10, and manually adjusting the value so that the border radius of the card and then the ink wall are the same. But I'm not going to do that. So another alternative solution to this is to use the clip behavior property on the card. So what that means is something like overflow, if you've done any form of web development before. So clip behavior, that is when something goes outside the card, what should happen? So we want to set it to clip.hardEdge. And what this will mean is that when something goes outside of this card, it should just clip it, right? So realize that the ink wall is going outside the card, but then it's getting clipped by the card. It doesn't feel like it's moving out of the card. Now that's going to fix it. But whenever we click on this card, we want to navigate to our new page, which is the Speak to AI page, right? So this is the page we want to navigate to. Speak to AI page. So how do we do that? We can put our navigation here, which is when we click on any of these cards, it's going to Speak to AI page, or we can pass a callback so that any person calling this card can provide a callback which navigates or does anything they want to do, right? So there are two approaches here. Because both cards would navigate to the same page, we are going to use the on tap within this card. That means that we've tied together the on tap functionality with the card. Example, over here we are passing the text and then the icon. That means that they are customizable, right? So we can pass in any the same card, but then we can pass in different icons and then text. But when we pass the on tap directly here without requiring it in the constructor, That means that we can't customize what each variant of the card or each instance of the card does, right? We can't do that, and we don't want that because they are all going to perform basically the same function. In your own app where you would want to have different functionalities for components, the best idea would be to require the on tap or whatever functionality that you are dealing with. So something like final void callback, which is just a signature for functions that don't have any argument, right? So we can pass this on press here like this, and then we require the on press, or we can just leave it because it is optional. Then wherever we are using this idea card, so if you come to the home page, we are using it here. So from here we can pass in separate on taps. I hope that's making sense, but we are not going to do that in this particular case. We are just going to put our navigation code directly here, right? So navigate to AI page. So let's first create that page. So under the pages, I'm going to create a new file called speak to AI page. Speak if I can type, so speak to AI page, and this should return a scaffold. And we have some kind of a problem, and if we check, okay, so that should fix it. So within the on tap, we want to just do our regular navigation. So navigator dot push, and then we want to pass in the material page route, and then the border is the callback that returns the page we want to go to. So speak to AI page like this. And now when we click on any of these cards, we should navigate to the speak to AI page. So I click on this, and here we're on the speak to AI page. Now on this page, we don't have any back button over here like in the UI. So if we look at the UI, we have a back button, we have a text in the center, and then we have some icon over here, right? So let's first look at that. We can put that in the app bar, and we can't have a const here. So by default, this gives me an automatically imply leading, and I want to supply our title. So our title is going to be a text that says, and if we can get a speaking to AI bot, so speaking to AI bot. Now our title is very large, but we will look at that. The last thing is to have the icon here, which is within the action. So anything that's on the right is going to be within the actions. And then within our actions, we are looking for icon button, and not icon, but then an icon button. And for now on press, we're not going to really do anything. But then the icon is going to be icons.more. And then I'm looking for this. So this is going to be the icon button we are looking for. Now let's style our title. Because all the pages have the same style for the title, I want us to do this at the theme level, right? So in our main.dat, where we have our theme defined, let's add another theme called app bar theme. And this app bar theme will have some kind of configuration. So the first one is we want to center title true. The reason why we are setting this is that by default on Android devices, the text of the title is not centered. It's only on iOS that is centered by default. So that will make sure that it is centered regardless of the device that we are running this on. Also, we want to change the title text style, right? Which is the text style for this title. So that is going to be Google font dot poppins and because that's the text theme we are using, Google font.poppins, and we want to change the font size. So font size 17 should work, right? And immediately we see that it becomes much smaller. So that means that all our app bars will have this configuration. Center title is true, and then we have this title text style. Now next, we want to go back to speak to AI page, and what we want to do is that we want to have our image. So if you look at the UI, realize that we have an image, and then we have some text with this section. So within our scaffold, we want to have a body, and then the body is going to be a list view with some children. Now within list view, we are going to have our image and then our text. Before we put our image there, let's have some kind of a padding, because if you followed my videos for a while, you realize that by default anything within the body will touch the edges of the screen. So we want to have some kind of space here so that the content is not touching the edge of the screen. So let's provide a padding all around of 20, and let's now add our image. So image.asset, and then we are looking for assets/robots.png, because we have an image of a robot in our asset, which is this robot, and we want to use that image over here. Also, we are providing a height of 300 to just constrain how big this image will be on the screen. So when I save, we are going to have this image here. Below the image, we want to have our text, but I want to have some kind of a space before the text, as you can see. So if I bring this here, we have some kind of a space here before the text, and we can use sizer box or padding. This now I'm just going to wrap this with a padding, and I'm going to give it a padding only bottom of 30. So then we have some kind of a space. Now if you look at this text very well, we realize that it's a text consisting of white and then some kind of a gray, right, text. So the best way to create something like this is to use the rich text widget or text.rich constructor. So if you are new to that, it's just like this: text, and instead of doing text and passing your string, we are rather going to do text.rich, and we are supposed to pass in something called text spans. So they are pieces of text that we can put together. So we pass in something called text span like this, and then we can put the actual text we want within the text span, so in a field called text, and this now around we are passing our string. So let's look at what we have. We have describe and show me the perfect vacation spot. So that's the first part of the text we want to have, and then we'll put the second part later. So describe and show me the perfect vacation spot. So realize that the default text style doesn't really look good because it is very small. Therefore, we are going to access a text style from our theme, and because of that, we are creating a variable called theme, which is just theme.ofContext. So within this text.rich, we can provide a global style for our text. Then we can modify each text span separately. So within the text.rich, can apply style, and that is going to be our theme.text theme, and then we are looking for headline small. So when we say by default, this is what the text is going to look like. Now we want to also center this text. That's every text here. So we can use the text align and then set it to text align dot center. Right, so we are slowly getting there, and I can add a const here if we wouldn't have to move it later. So the thing I've realized again is that this needs to be bold, right? But if you look at the UI, it's only this portion that I think is bold. Or if you want to make everything bold, then that will be easy. So what we have to do is we just have to modify the headline, copy it, and then see that the font weight should be bold. Now we have a bold text here. Now next, we want to add another text to the edge of this, and we are not using hacky ways like row, trying to move it with margins and paddings. No, instead of using that, the rich text or the text.rich allows us to use something called children, and then the children is an array, right? So a list of text spans acting like children, and then everything is combined together to form one text. So children, and we can provide more text spans. And this now we are going to have text, and the text is going to be on an island in the ocean. So just like this, and then we save. Now when we save, we don't really see any difference, but the only thing we are seeing is that if you look at this, we have spot and on are joined together, right? So whenever you are using this text spans, it performs some kind of a string concatenation. So this is directly joined to this. Because of that, we need to provide a space either here, right, like this, and that is going to create a space, or a space at where it starts. So any of them will work. We just need to have some kind of a space so that when they are joined together, they wouldn't join together like we saw, right? Now we have a text like we would have used just the text widgets without text.rich. So how do we modify the second part of the text? So in order to modify this, we can supply a different text style. So style and then text style, and then change the properties of this one. So what we want to do is, first we want to change the color, and I'm going to use colors.gray, and then with a shade of 600, and invalid constant values, right? So that is going to give us something that looks like this. The last part of this is to get this section, right? So how do we work on this? How do we get this? We can just put it directly in the list view, but from how I'm looking at it, it looks like something that will be fixed, position fixed while you scroll. That is if this page is going to be scrollable. So my approach to solving this is to utilize, instead of the body, which in this case a list view so it can scroll, I use the floating action button widget. So let's look at how that works. I'm going to collapse this, and then within the scaffold we are going to use a floating action button, and this floating action button is expecting just a widget. So we can capitalize on the fact that the floating action button requires just a widget instead of some kind of a specified widget, and they're easy to design the UI we want. So if we look at this, we realize that we have 3 buttons in a row, icon buttons. So let's first have a row with children, and then we have 3 icon buttons. So icon button and press, and then for now I just want to have icon.mic. And we need 3 of these, so I'm going to copy like this, and realize that they are to the left, which is not actually the place we want them to be. So there are 2 ways we can fix this. The first thing is to change the floating action button location. So there is a field over here which is floating action button location, and let's set it to floating action button location dot center float. And that doesn't seem to do much, but it has actually moved it away from the left side. Now within a row, there is a way of aligning widgets in a row, specifically on the main axis. So let's use the main axis alignment, and I don't mean a main function, but the main axis alignment, and set it to main axis alignment dot space evenly. So when we set space evenly. They're just going to, as the name suggests, space evenly, and that's going to create this kind of layout for us. Now what we want to do next is that we want to first work on each individual button. So the first thing we want to do, we want to make this icon buttons much bigger. So I'm going to wrap this icon buttons in a sizer box, and then give the first one a width of 55 and then a height of 55. So it has become bigger than it was previously. If you compare it to this, you realize that this is much bigger. Also, I don't want to just use a normal icon button. I want to use .filled toner, which is a version of the icon button that has a background color like this. Now I don't also like this background color, and I also feel the color of the icon is not what I want. So I can immediately change the color of the icon by setting a color field on the icon button and setting it to colors.white. So that means that the icon itself will be a white color. Now in order to change the background, we can use the style property and icon button.style from. Then we can set the background color to be a color from this UI. So you can just copy this color, and I have a color picker here, and there's the color 232729, right? And if I'm to zoom in and inspect very well, 232729, right? That's the color I have. So I'm going to set the color to 0xFF232729 like this. Now we have this color, and that is going to be it for the first icon button. The first icon button and then the last icon button are the same, so I'm just going to copy this and then replace it with this. So we have two icon buttons. Now the only thing we have to do is to change the icon itself. So I'm going to change this to icons.chat outlined, because in the UI we have a chat icon here. Right. Now the next icon, which is the last icon over here, is going to be our more icon. So just like what we used over here. So icon.more like this. And if you look at the UI again, realize that it has something like this, right? And there are variants of this more icon that you can choose. You can just put any color there. Now the main thing is this middle one. So I'm going to wrap this guy in a container instead of a sizer box, because we want to do more modifications. Now I'm going to increase the width and the height more than the first and the last icon button. So I'm going to set the width to 90 and then the height also to 90. That is going to make it very big. And I'm going to change the icon. Instead of icon.mic, I would rather want to use the Cupertino version of the icon. So Cupertino icons.mic. Right, I prefer the mic version of the icon. Also, we want to change this to icon button.filled toner like this, right? And we want to change the background color as well. So let's apply the same style. I'm going to copy this and then put it here. Also, let's make sure that our color is white. So just within the icon button.filled, we can set a color here and then set it to colors.white, right? And realize that our icon is too small in this icon button, so we can increase the icon by setting the icon size property to 40, and that's going to make our icon big. Now the last thing, which is what we have to do, is to have this shadow that it doesn't look like a shadow, but some kind of a circle around it. And how I did this was to use the box shadow property in the container. So one thing is, this color is different from this, so I'm going to pick this color instead. and realize that it's 313638. So let's rather use that one instead of this. 313638, right? And then we can style our container. So within the container we can have a style, not style, decoration, and then box decoration. Within this box decoration we can have a shape, and then this shape is going to be box shape dot circle, just because we want to have a circular shape and then a circular shadow as well. And then we can add a box shadow, which is a list of box shadows. And when we save, we're not going to see anything because this shadow is not actually producing any shadow. We have to modify the properties of this shadow. So the first thing I want to do is I want to change the color of this shadow, and we need to use color like this, and then copy the color for the icon button. So color over here, and one more thing we need to do. So if I add const, yeah, this is what we have. We have a box shadow, and then within the box shadow we have a color. We want to change the spread radius. So spread radius, let's set that to 20, right? So in order to create this shape where we have this thing around it, we can just use a shadow of a container around it. There are so many ways you can do this. You can also use circle avatar, so this becomes a circle avatar, and then the icon button is within it. There are so many ways you can do this, right? But then this is how I did it. Now, one thing I realized is that this thing is too close to the bottom of this page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap this row in a padding widget and set a padding only of bottom with a value of 30. And that is going to move it up a bit. And now this thing over here will be fixed on the page. And that is it for the second page of this tutorial. If you like this video, please like, share. If you have any questions, please leave it at the comment section, and I'll see you in the next one.